What are the key issues facing the legislature this session?
I think the major issue that we'll be addressing is the budget shortfall before us. It's about $1.4 billion of additional cuts that we'll need to make. Now, people are also going to hear a lot about a referendum package, some sort of revenue package that we'll be sending to the voters. We're looking at something between $400 and $500 million in that package that we'll send to the voters. Could be a combination of additional revenue, or it could be some issues that are relating to closing tax exemptions. But even that, if that were to be passed by the voters, would not fully address the challenge that's before us. So there will be significant cuts being addressed. And that means that since we've been doing this for the last 5 budgets that we've written here in the House, the analogy I like to use is we're orchardists. And we've gone to the orchard and we've picked the low-hanging fruit. We've gotten some help from ladders and friends to pick the middle-hanging fruit. We've picked up a cherry picker and we've gone to the top of the tree and we've picked the fruit up there. This last budget that we did, we were gleaning at that point. We went back into the orchard and we picked what was on the ground. Now we have to really be talking about whether or not the structure of the tree is still, has integrity. And we're looking at all of our programs now that are likely to be cut in this budget to identify what are going to be those elements that we'll send to the voters and ask for their help in restoring the health of that tree.
What programs do you think are most important to protect from cuts?
My background is in health and human services programs. I've worked alongside and provided services to the very poor and vulnerable in our society. And so I have perhaps a bias in this regard. The Supreme Court just handed down a ruling last week that seemed to say they demand of us our education reform packages for K-12 basic education take top priority in this budget analysis. So when we have so little in the budget now, so little in it that is state-only funded dollars, we have then a large percentage of it that will be set aside for K-12 basic education. And for how much ever more we do than we have done in the past, it pushes out the challenge to balance that final budget onto our general government agencies, which is a very small percentage of the budget, our criminal justice system, our higher education system, and the biggest pot left is all of our health and human services programs. So I'm trying to help find balance in that final scenario so that we do retain services to vulnerable persons in our communities, we do retain access to higher education, and we do keep our state agencies operating and providing the services that they need to provide.
If you could pass just one bill this session, what would it be?
That's a very good question. Probably the bill I'm most invested in is the collection of DNA on arrest for felony crimes. This is a system that's been implemented in 26 states now. It does a number of things. When we collect DNA on crime scenes, oftentimes they run that data through the system and they can't find anybody who's already in the system with the DNA that matches that crime scene. So that crime becomes a cold case. There is no one to arrest for that crime. We have a growing number of crimes against women and children in our society, and there really have not been any new tools to be able to stem the crimes against women and children. This tool, collecting DNA when a person is arrested for a burglary or driving under the influence, may actually result in DNA being collected, scanned against the federal database, and actually solving cold cases. So there are a lot of families out there who want closure on cases that involve family members. There also are people who've been convicted of crimes that may not have been the person who actually committed those crimes. So DNA has an ability to exonerate a person from being considered in a crime as well.
What other new ideas or programs do you hope to win approval for?
Well, I've been working all summer with a task force of people in the justice system who work mostly with juveniles to address an issue that was brought up to me by some constituents in Tacoma who, the phenomena was this, that young people committed a crime. They were adjudicated in the juvenile system, and their records exist in the public domain at this point. Their records are in fact currently being sold to consumer credit companies, and that data out there on the internet and making it available to these kind of rating companies actually has resulted in these young people, when they hit 28, 29 years of age, and they're trying to buy a car, they're trying to buy a house, they're trying to get into a college, that data comes back to haunt them, even though the crime happened as juveniles. So I have two bills this session. One with an automatic sealing if the person was found not to have been guilty of the crime, because that information is also out there. And also making the records confidential in the future, like they would be for a foster youth or some other child in our system that are held confidential from public view. So that I'm very proud of the work of this very large task force. They came together, worked very hard, every other week met during the interim, and came forward with consensus on 2 areas.
What would earn the legislature an A+ for the 2012 session?
I think our grades should always be predicated on how well we listened to people in our communities. So I think that's the #1 thing we have to do, is hear from constituents, hear from groups that are serving the people who are likely to be impacted by the cuts that we are undoubtedly going to make, so that we can make rational, sustainable, and defensible decisions. We're only as good. I often talk about how myopic we are. You know, we are informed by our experiences, just like every person in society is informed by their experiences. And if, you know, we have our family, that's part of our view. Our friends are part of our view. Our neighbors are part of our view. And in our case, the more constituents that provide us input, the better decision makers will be.